My name's Jodie. I don't think that we've ever met before. I think that you might be my biological father.
Hello, you are listening to NPE Stories. This is a podcast where NPEs can share their story. I am your host, Lily, and I found out I was an NPE through an ancestry DNA test that changed my life forever. NPE is a term that stands for Not Parent Expected or Non-Paternal Event. This means that one or more of our parents are not who we believe them to be. NPE Stories is a podcast where NPEs can share their story of what their original family was like, how they found out they were an NPE, and what their journey has been like since the day they found out. Welcome to episode 121. Today I am speaking with Jodie. Hi, Jodie.
Hi, Lily.
Thank you so much for doing this with me tonight.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be a part of this. And I just want to say thank you for having this platform. And thank you to all of the other people before that have told their stories. It has helped me tremendously just in this journey and knowing that I'm not alone in it.
Right. So much gratitude for the people that come on every week and share their stories. Yes, thank you. Thank you for saying that. Okay, Miss Jodie, we are going to listen to your story today, and we're just going to go ahead and get into it right away. I don't have any announcements. The format, feel free to change it however you want, but it's normally telling a little bit about your family of origin, whatever you're comfortable with, and then how you found out you were an NPE and what life has been like since finding out. So I'm going to hand it over to you right now.
Great. So I was born in 1980. I am the youngest of four, and there are quite a big age gap between the four of us in general. So my oldest sibling is a sister, and she is 17 years older than me. So they had one going out the door as I came in. My only brother is 13 years older than me. I have another sister that is six and a half years older than me. And then there was me. So my parents had been married for about 17 or 18 years when my mom got pregnant with me. I did not find out until I was 20 when I first found out. So my childhood was pretty normal. I did not have any inkling or know that there was any difference between me and my other siblings. I was absolutely a daddy's girl. He was the person that I was closest to in the world, my biggest fan and supporter. And yeah, so I just never had any inkling. Grew up with such age differences. I was almost an only child at one point. I think I was about 12 when my sister moved out. For the last 8 years of that, I lived at home as an only child and became an aunt at the age of 5. And so childhood was pretty easy in the aspect of not knowing any difference, not having any feeling of like not belonging. I never had a very close relationship with my mother, but I never knew why. So growing up was good in all other aspects. My dad did get sick when I was about 7, and he had some massive strokes and had to learn how to walk and talk again. And I actually lived with my oldest sister off and on for about a year during that time when he was in and out of the hospitals and in and out of really rehabilitation and learning how to develop his motor skills again. And just my mom trying to navigate that with 2 younger children. And then when I was 13, he was diagnosed with, I was 9 when he was diagnosed with cancer. And so just during my adolescence and teenage years, dealt with a lot of that and just his sickness. And he actually passed away when I was 20. And so that was really kind of my childhood. Again, just very close with my dad. Always spent a lot of time with him. He was at home after the age of 7. And so he kind of took on the caregiver nurturing. And that was really his personality, where my mom was more of the disciplinary. She was the breadwinner after that age span of 7. And so he taught me how to cook, and we gardened and played in the yard, and he taught me how to ride a bike. And again, just very close. He was a very quiet man. And so he didn't have a lot to say, but just really was good at loving and listening and being supportive. So it was really a great experience having him at home and being close to him, and just getting those years of quality time since I lost him at such a young age. It was definitely a heartbreaking moment in my life, and I hope no one ever has to go through that. I know everybody does have to, eventually at some point lose a parent or both parents. And I think at 20, it was just a really hard experience that I wasn't prepared for, but at the same time knew that he wasn't suffering anymore. And so
I'm so sorry for your loss.
thank you. So I looking back after I found out, I can see like a few little pieces of things that happened throughout my childhood that would later solidify, like knowing. I remember one time I was probably 4 or 5. And again, you have to remember like the age differences in the siblings, but I had heard my oldest sister call my brother the word bastard, and I did not know what it meant. And I said it in repeat in the car, or we were walking up the back steps of the house. And my dad was, again, never a disciplinary person, but he just popped me right in the back of the mouth and sent me to my room. And he came in a few minutes later and was so upset that he had, like kind of popped my mouth and talked through like why none of his kids were that name, and that I could never say that about any of his kids again, because at that point, I wasn't saying anything bad about my brother. I was saying something bad about him. And he just reminded me in that moment that all of his kids were loved, and that he was there for them. And so that's something that I remember. One, I think, because that was the only time I think he ever disciplined me. But again, gave me just that confirmation in it that I was loved, and that I was his child. Sorry, I get a little emotional with that. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely something I remember. And again, I had a really hard relationship with my mother growing up. And I was actually really glad after I found out. It really it calmed me and comforted me in knowing that it was nothing I had ever done. I think she constantly looked at me as a reminder of choices and decisions that she had made. And I don't think she ever did it intentionally. But we didn't have a great relationship. And at 11 or 12, I remember a big blow up happening as a preteen. And I asked my dad at one point to just divorce her and that we could move somewhere else. And he said to me that he wouldn't get me. And he said, your mom wouldn't let me have you. And I was like, no, I'm at the age where I would get to decide. And he just kind of said no and went on with, there wouldn't be enough money and those kind of things. And I tried to give him convincing reasons of why it would work. And he just, reiterated that he wasn't going to divorce my mom and that we would get through this. And it's just interesting after you find out, looking back at those little moments in time and understanding the words and piecing it all together at that point. And then I think too, looking back, we were not close with his side of the family. And any time that we would go over there, my mom wouldn't really go with us. It would just be me and my dad. And I remember hearing stories of how involved they were in my oldest two siblings' lives and not really in my life or my sister's life. And so I think looking back at that, there was always that. When I was younger, I don't know that I noticed it so much. But then when I got a little older and had heard the truth, I guess it was an interesting feeling to know that I have had to receive the repercussions of decisions made by adults, and I was an infant or a child, or those things. It wasn't anything in my control, and I didn't even know about it. And so I think it's interesting looking at it from that perspective sometimes at the people that hold the punishment and how that affects us.
Yep.
Yeah.
And how we suffer a lot of the consequences for their actions.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, absolutely. And that's been something that I've really tried to work through over the last year and a half, 2 years. Hope that I don't ever treat anybody because of somebody else's choices. Because I know I often get very frustrated by that fact. And I feel like it's made me even more sensitive of a person because of it. I get really frustrated by that fact.
Did your mom have a similar relationship with your siblings the way she had with you?
I think it's interesting because I think at times there always has been a disconnect between her and different siblings. I think other times she's always found a way to connect with them more than she could ever connect with me. And so I read a book that I had found on one of the websites. I'm on Facebook, but it was something about emotionally. It's about being emotionally incapable, or I don't think it's unintelligent, but it's something along those lines. And it actually really helped me in understanding that she wasn't emotionally able or capable enough to handle certain situations, and that she never learned those coping mechanisms or maturity levels, and I think that she's always been a pretty selfish person and has thought about herself first, without thinking about others. And so that book was helpful in just understanding that piece, because I don't think I had ever really understood it until then.
I think I need to read this book too. You get me the name of that book later before I publish this, and I'll put it in the notes.
Great. Yes, that would be good. I will definitely find it and then send it to you. So finding out for me was kind of twofold. So my dad passed away in December when I was 20. And in June of that following year, I was out at the pool. We had a little pool out in our backyard at my parents' house. And my mom was out of town for the weekend. I had a friend or two over, and we were swimming, and my brother came over with his wife and kids. And we were swimming and had sat on the back porch patio area. And he had asked me or made a comment about a couple of items of my dad's that he had wanted, one being his wedding ring, and another being his class ring. And both of those items my father had given me before he passed away. And we were both born in the month of October. And so he gave me his class ring because it was his birthstone, and that was also my birthstone. And then he gave me his wedding ring probably a year or two before he passed away, because he had gotten so thin that it didn't fit anymore. And I really loved thumb rings at the time. It was the late 90s, and those were very popular. And so we had went to Case Jewelers one day to get him a new wedding ring, and he took his wedding ring off and gave it to me, and it fit my thumb perfectly. And he told me just to keep it. And so I had wore it from that day on. And so I had both of those pieces of jewelry. And I was actually wearing the thumb ring the day that he said it, his wedding ring, that my brother had said that he had wanted it. And I said, oh, I already have his wedding ring. And he gave me his class ring, a long time ago too. And he was upset and frustrated because of that fact, and made the comment that I shouldn't get it because I wasn't his. And that was exactly how I found out, and had never again before that ever thought any other way than these were my parents. I joked a lot when I was growing up about the age differences and how they had 3 children and everything was good, but then they thought they could do a little bit better and had me, and just really teased about being the youngest, and how they had perfected it when they finally had me. And so, again, just blindsided. And I remember it felt like the air had gotten knocked out of me. And he stopped right after he said it. And his wife at the time, her name was also Jodie. And you could just see it on her face. Like, what did you say? And so he wouldn't say anymore. They ended up all leaving. And it was just a moment in time that I will never forget and wish I could all the time. I remember calling my mom, who was out of town, asking her and telling her that she needed to get home. And then not knowing what to do after that. And so my friends that were there had left, and I got in my car and I drove to Target, which is where my my dad's sister worked. And I found her. We went into a dressing room and I asked her, and she confirmed that it was a rumor that had been said, but that he had always denied it, and said that it was never going to be brought up again, and that they all just chose to honor his wishes and never say anything about it. And so I left there kind of feeling like, okay, like everybody knows about this but me. So I went to my mom's sister and confronted her and asked her if she had known about it. And she just tried to comfort me and tell me that I needed to talk to my mom, that there had been rumors, but a lot of it she thought was just because of the age differences. And so she came home on Sunday and really just denied it. She asked if I thought she was a whore, and really like turned it back onto herself. And so for the next 19 years, she denied it. My sisters never knew anything. My oldest sister, that's 17 years older, said that it wasn't true. And her story over the 19 years changed from time to time, which made me believe more that it was true. My brother and I, of course, did not have a very close relationship after that, and would go in spouts, sometimes multiple years without talking. And other times, he would use that anytime that there was an argument between he and I, or a disagreement, and he had a bit of a drug problem later on, he would use that to get at me, to attack me. And so that was always a difficult situation because, again, I had no confirmation except for that one sentence that he said. And so years and years would go on, and I would confront my mom from time to time. And it was always, you know who your dad is. You know that he loved you. Why would you ask questions like that? And so it was really such a time of lies and of gaslighting and manipulation. And then I would go through time spans where I just felt very crazy, is the best way to describe it. Is I didn't know how to feel, if I was making all of this up in my head, if it was true. I just felt very displaced. I didn't trust people, and could never get anybody to fully understand like where I was coming from and needing to know this information. And so that's where I would talk to my oldest sister back and forth sometimes. And I think that's where she would waver. And so in 2020, my mom needed to have a heart catheterization done. And we were all going to meet a couple of towns or a state over for her to do it, all of my sisters and her. And she was saying something about my brother on the phone, and I got kind of frustrated and had an argument with her. And I said, he tells me every chance that he can that I'm not dad's kid and that you're a liar, and yet you defend him a lot. And is it true? And she finally said that it was true. And she told me my birth father's name. And so at that moment, I knew I had to be very careful in my next words to her, because she is the gatekeeper of all of the information. And I knew that I had to be strategic in what I wanted to know, what information I could get from her. And if I came out with anger or bitterness instantly with her, it would be shut down and I would never receive any other information from her. And so I thanked her for telling me. And I think I asked maybe one other question that day of like, how did she know him? And they had worked together at a department store for some time span, I think is what she said. And that it was a quick affair, but it wasn't like a one night stand. And I think after that, I just got off the phone and then called my sister that's just a few years older than me. Her name's Jamie, and cried and told her that it was true, and told her that I had already looked up the name on Facebook and found him. And I actually thought he was just like an hour away for where I live currently. But actually he is not. And so it was quite a, just plethora of information. And ironically, it was also in June. So I know that is NPE awareness. And both times that I found out were in June, which is just a very ironic thing to me.
Yes.
So you have to find humor where you can in these situations.
Right? Yes.
Yeah. From there, I asked her probably on 2 or 3 other occasions, 1 to 2 questions, if he knew, and, just different things like that. And so she would tell me, she said that he never knew. And it really confused me because with the age differences that there are between my siblings, there are very large age differences between my mom and dad. My parents were 11 years apart, almost 12 years apart. And then her and my birth father are 12 years apart. So when I was born, she was 37. My dad turned 49 or 48 the week after I was born. And my birth father turned 25 the day before I was born.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So he is only 7 years older than my oldest sibling. So it's just a very interesting age gaps. And to have a sister that's 17 years older than you, and then he just be a few years older than her, it's been a very weird dynamic and getting to know him because
yes.
My parents are old. And, it's just, it's a very interesting dynamic in that. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really interesting and odd.
Yes. To say the least.
Yes.
And his father is still alive and is actually either a year older than my dad or a year younger. And so that's just been an oddity.
Oh,
As
your grandpa is still alive, your paternal.
Yes. Yeah.
If you call him that, if you consider him that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's very interesting because relationship titles have been very hard for me. And I don't know exactly why. But yeah, it's just been very interesting and trying, like, I've met quite a bit of his family, and they're all very nice and polite and wonderful and very excited to get to know me. And then they'll be like, but I'm your aunt. And I'm like, like, it's almost like this, like, technically, and I feel bad feeling that way, but it's just, I don't know why that's been such a hard jump for me for titles, but
You are not
yeah,
alone.
yeah. So,
Okay, so you've met him, you've contacted him somehow. How did that go?
yes. So, I found out in June. In December, I had already had 23andMe, but didn't have any close matches. And so in December, I took an ancestry. And in January of 21, I came into work and I had opened up my work email and checked it, and then opened up my um, personal email and went to check it. And it said that my DNA results were in. And I told myself, I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to look at it. And about 3 seconds later, I opened it up and looked at it and really held out in restraint there, and saw a confirmation with his last name. And it was not him, but it was family members of him that were on there. And so I knew instantly. And about a half an hour later, I sent him a Facebook Messenger message, and just said, hi, like, my name's Jodie. I don't think that we've ever met before. And then went on a little bit and said, I think that you might be my biological father. And then I realized about an hour later that I hadn't said my mom's name. And so I responded again and told him that. And then I waited until February 13th, and it was a Saturday morning. And I woke up and it was Facebook Messenger had a message. And I remember reading it and then calling my sister Jamie, because I call her after every big thing, and say, what did I do? Why did I message him? He messaged me back. And so he said that he didn't know, and was very polite in all of his messages, and said that he did know my mom. And I am sure it was a huge shock for him. And so we messaged back and forth maybe once or twice that day total. And then periodically over the next couple of weeks, in March, he told his wife about me and about me messaging him. And he was really great in those messages. Like, he gave me all of the family health history that I had asked for. One of my first questions was to ask him if he had any children. He and his wife have been married for quite a long time. I think they got married when I was probably like 6 or 7, maybe. So he had not, cheated on anyone or any of those kind of things. He didn't have any biological children, but they had raised her son together, who's a few years older than me. And so gave me, just really great information like that. And was open, and he told her, and then he and I talked on the phone after that a couple of days later. And I waited tables and bartended when I was going through college, and was always told, like, you don't talk about politics or religion or anything controversial like that when you're doing, like, waiting tables or bartending. And in our first conversation, I think we talked about all of those topics. And I remember even saying, like, I don't think we're supposed to talk about these things. Just sounds like fighting words. But the conversation went fairly well. I mean, I think we were both nervous. But again, just really open and interested in getting to know me a little bit more. And then he and his wife flew out to where I live in Kentucky and came to visit for a weekend. And it was such a surreal experience. I, again, can be very emotional sometimes and just thought I was going to cry like the whole time that they were here. And I did and didn't. I didn't even cry when I first met him. We looked at pictures and we did a lot of looking at pictures that whole weekend. And there were times that it was very hard not knowing like how to refer to like my dad or my parents or things like that to him and his wife, because I wanted to be very aware of their feelings in this. My mom said that he had never known. He said that he didn't know. I don't know how much of that I believe, and he knows that. And I've let him know that I have a lot of trust issues, apparently because of the way that I grew up. But my mom, I was the fourth. I don't know how you couldn't tell that she was pregnant. And they worked together for at least 6 months of the pregnancy. So I don't believe that he didn't know that she wasn't pregnant. And I think at one point he said that he didn't think that the timeline added up. So I think that he was young and that she was married and that it was a choice that they all made. I don't know that they had the conversation to make the choice. Or if it was just everybody stay silent and go on with what decisions everybody's making. And so that's fine. I mean, that's what happened and I can't change it. And I don't know that I would want to. I think God knew that I needed my dad and I got my dad just in a different way. I'm thankful for that. But the weekend went very well. His wife has been very kind. And I can only imagine how surprising of an announcement that is. And she's been very open and honest, and we've had some really great conversations. You know, like I talked to her about not knowing how to address my parents or my relationship with my dad in front of them. And she's always been very welcoming and receiving that information and said that they're very thankful for my dad and that I had that relationship with him. And yeah, just that they feel blessed that he was so close to me and that I didn't feel different growing up in that. And so I think that that's been really great to hear that and to really believe that. But I thought it was really interesting. It was either the first time I talked to her or the first time that I met them in person. She had said that she was a little worried at first because she had always been the woman in his life. And I kind of chuckled because I was like, I don't know what you mean. Like, I don't want to be the woman in his life. And so I can definitely see where I think it's hard for her at times. And I think that her and I and him and just everybody involved, even his son, have to remember that this is all new to each of us. And I think for me, like, I always want to say, like, if I feel like my feelings have gotten hurt or I don't know how to respond to like their family dynamics, because it's so different than my family dynamics. But I feel like I always just want to shout, like, I'm the innocent bystander. Like, and I know that she is as well. But at the same time, I didn't choose this. And so, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
That
that's the comment that I always want to say is I didn't choose this.
yes. And I know you say she's been welcoming,
Yeah.
but and that's wonderful, but the comment from your birth father's wife will probably always be in your head. I've been the only woman in his life. That would be hard to hear and
Yeah.
confusing. Mm.
Yeah. And I think it was so funny because when I first heard it, like I kind of laughed. Because I was very honest with him when I reached out to him that I didn't know if I wanted any kind of contact or, you know, um, like relationship. I think it was for self-preservation and for protection on my part. I didn't want to put myself out there. I didn't want to be rejected. Um, his father hasn't wanted to meet me. And I think it's funny because, like I said, I've met both of his sisters and I've met, I think almost all of his nieces and nephews. I think there's just one that I haven't met, and they're all so welcoming and so kind. And I'm always like, whoa, this is a lot. And so they're like, oh, he'll come around. And I'm like, it's okay if he doesn't. Like, I don't have to meet everybody.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I feel bad about that sometimes. And then other times I think again, it's just been so much and so many people, and such a drastic life change. And I think it's interesting the emotions that come with it, because there are times where I felt like a dirty little secret, or like that I had done, like that there was some kind of like stain or tarnish on me because of this. And just having to know that that's not true. And that if people think that that's on them and not on me, that's their burden to carry and not mine. I ended up going out. So they came in May to visit, and I went in August to their summer home. So they are, I guess, snowbirds. They spend 6 months a year in one area and 6 months a year in another area that's a little bit warmer. And so I went out to visit them, and it was a whirlwind of a trip. As soon as we landed, we went and met their son and daughter-in-law and their two kids, and then drove to their house. And then the next day I met her sister and husband, and then their son and his wife and kids came up to their house for the week. And one of his sisters and her husband flew in. We went whitewater rafting and did a lot of other things. And it was just very interesting because I guess I thought that they would want a little bit more one-on-one, like get to know you quality time. And they, I guess, just wanted to have the house full and things going on. And so it was a very interesting and overwhelming visit, but it was a good visit. I think it was interesting to see their family dynamics and just the different lifestyles that we had. I wouldn't say that I grew up poor, but we also didn't grow up very wealthy. And with my mom only being the sole income, and my dad having a lot of health issues, we always had everything we needed, but we didn't always have an abundance. And they have a very more affluent life, which is great for them. And I'm happy that they're able to do those things. And they're both retired, and they still own some businesses, but I think their son runs those, and I think he's taking over the businesses. And they're very kind and generous, and the whole time I was out there, like taking care of everything. But it's just been very interesting because my brother told me out of anger because I had something that he had wanted. And so I feel like money's always been tied to this a little bit. And the gifts that my dad had given me, I would have given away in a heartbeat if I would have had more time with him. And so I've always been very intentional at being a gift giver and really thinking about somebody and thinking through what they would like or what would be special to them. And I rack my brain over it and worry about it. And so I really worried about sending her a nice gift for her birthday and for his birthday. Both were before mine. And not so that I would get something, extravagant back or anything like that. But I sent flowers to her because who doesn't love fresh flowers? And then to him, I had tried to send, some of his favorite things or things that I knew that he might enjoy. And again, his birthday is the day before mine. So I called him and we talked, and then I had gotten my gifts from them for my birthday. And she's really a very talented quilter. She had made me this really cool little like casserole pie carrier and had made it with material that she had bought while she was visiting me. So we were together at the fabric store. And so it was very sentimental and kind. And he didn't even sign the card. He sent me a text message on my birthday, and it took me a couple of months to finally say something to him about it. And he was like, well, we had talked the day before. And I was like, yeah, but like, you didn't know me for 40 birthdays. Like to me, I just would have assumed that he would want to call me on my birthday.
Yeah.
And so that really threw me. And then for Christmas, he didn't send me any gifts. She had picked them out, and a lot of my friends had tried to tell me that a lot of husbands or dads don't buy gifts. But that, again, just wasn't the way that I was brought up. My dad always bought us gifts from him, and then gifts from him and my mom. And so he always made sure that there was a special gift that was just from him that he had picked out. And my brother-in-laws do the same thing for my nieces and nephews. And so to me, it was just so foreign that he wouldn't have wanted to pick something out special for me. And she had sent me a few items that she had hoped that I really liked, but it was just interesting because I think there were some really nice items that I think she really liked, but just don't fit into my life per se. And then there was one that she had gifted me from a trip that they had been on 8 or 9 years before. And so that felt very confusing in that gift of just like, why was that special to me? And again, I think I put way too much emphasis when I'm picking out a gift and making sure that they're going to be able to use it or enjoy it, or it'll fit their life. And so I had put a lot of pressure on myself. So it was very confusing. And I thought it was interesting because I had met them or talked to him in February, and then I knew that I wasn't ready to spend holidays with them, and they didn't ask me. And I was happy that there wasn't that awkward conversation. But then at the same time, they had been on a long vacation right before the holidays, and they kept saying that they would call as they were driving back up to their summer home to meet their son for the holidays. And they kept putting it off and not calling me or forgetting or getting busy. And so I didn't really talk to them until like midday on Christmas. And I think by that point, like I had just really worked myself up into overthinking that I was an inconvenience or second thought. It just felt like a very awkward conversation. And then he apologized a little bit later, just saying that he wasn't much of a Christmas person, and that he hoped I didn't take it personally. And so I think it's been interesting because I've been very cautious and worrying about taking things personally and overthinking things, but I'm afraid to say things to them in fear that it will upset them and harm the relationship. And so I tend to just internalize it and overthink it and then not know where I stand in our relationship. And so I'm trying to figure out that process right now. I I was invited out to their summer home, or well, their winter home. It would feel like summer for me. And I didn't end up going. But they are coming to visit his sister that lives about an hour away from me in June. And so I've asked them to come and meet my sister and her husband, because that's really important to me that they meet some people in my family. And then I'll probably go spend a day with them at his sister's house. And I think, some of his family will be there. So I'm sure I'll meet some more people and try to figure out our relationship and what that's going to look like going forward.
And this is something I hear so many times with other NPEs is, you're meeting someone new as an adult and you're treading so cautiously. And Jodie, you sound like a very thoughtful, considerate person who's incredibly respectful of them and their family dynamics. But I think it's okay to have feelings like you're feeling of not being necessarily considered on certain holidays and being, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but feeling like an afterthought or perhaps unspecial with, not being necessarily considered with being called or being included in the family holidays. That is such a hard new dynamic to work around. And that's, you feel like you can't just be your authentic self and tell someone, this is how I feel and this hurts my feelings and this felt strange or whatever your feelings were.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's been such an interesting, because I think in my family, I'm so vocal about that stuff. I think almost sometimes to the negative, I'm like, oh, I didn't like that. I'm just so open and honest with them and with my family. And I feel comfortable with that. And for some reason, I just have not felt that way with them. And I think it's just that fear factor of knowing that at any moment they can say, I'm out, I'm done. At any moment I could say I'm out, I'm done. And not knowing how to navigate that and have those conversations. I was actually really proud of myself for the visit that they have coming up in June, because it was just kind of, I hate to use the word insinuated, but that I would just go there to his sister's, and I'm happy to. I've met up with her multiple times because she is so close. But it was really important that he meet my sister that I'm so close with. And so I had talked to his wife about that, and then they were going to talk and get back to me. And then I felt like it was really important for me to say that to him, because I think anytime that there has been a hard conversation, I've started it off with her. And so I sent him an email and just said, this is what I need. This is what I would like. And I hope that you can meet that. And so I am making baby steps in that. And I think I'm trying to get more comfortable in letting them know my needs or my expectations, and overcome that fear factor of, oh, I can't say that. What if I offend them? But yeah, I have to remember that, I'm offended sometimes and that my feelings count too. And so, and it's just being mindful too, that there's emotions and it's okay to feel them, but it's not okay just to stay in them all the time. And I don't have to live in that trauma, or heartache of this process all the time. I can have happiness and joy and enjoy life and not have to stress about, the dynamic of the relationship, and allowing myself to, if I get too stressed out about what are we going to talk about when I call, I just don't call. Like, I'm like, okay, it's all right. And just giving myself those allowances. And I will say a lot of that is because I did a year of therapy and it was wonderful, and much needed. And, I've listened to every single one of your podcasts and heard everybody's stories, and it's helped me. And then whenever I'm really lost, I'll go to the Facebook group and type in, just my thoughts or frustrations. And it's so great to hear other people that are going, I hate it for them that they're going through the same things, but then knowing that you're not the only one going through it.
Yep.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm in the sisterhood of nodding heads right now because I've been like
Right.
nodding along with you a
Yeah.
lot with how you describe so well the new dynamics you are dealing with. And to confirm, is your bio father, not that this matters, but did you say your bio father and your birth father and his wife, is that his biological child, their son?
No, it is not.
Okay, so you are his only biological child.
Yes, I am. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a big deal. I mean, not to discount his son, of course, who he considers his son, but.
Right. Yeah. No, it's another interesting dynamic in that too, because I would have been the first grandchild on that side of the family.
Oh, wow.
Where on my side of the, and both my dad and my mom came from pretty large families. And I was, I think, almost the last grandchild on both sides of those families. And so I know there's like 22 or 23 of us grandkids on my mom's side, and, pretty close on my dad's side to that, like high number. But so it's just an interesting dynamic to think of, like how different that would have been.
Oh yeah.
To have those interactions and those kind of things. Cause I, like I said earlier, I've been an aunt since I was 5. Like I remember having that first niece and seeing all of that attention that she got, and experiencing that in such a young part of my life. And even now, just having, siblings that are so much older, they're all grandparents. And I am single and have no children. And so it's just interesting to see how, like, your position and your family with siblings and your position and even just like grandkids and things like that, like how that differs from family to family and what that could have looked like.
How many of your siblings knew you were an NPE? Because your brother threw the bombshell on you, 20 years ago. Did anyone else know?
So the 2 oldest knew, my sister that was 17 years older, and then my brother, because they were 17 and 13. So I think both of them knew, but didn't know all of the details. My birth father goes by a nickname. And so my sister knew his nickname. But that was about all that she knew. Mm-hmm. And then I don't think my brother ever knew his name. Both of my sisters and all of my nieces and nephews know that I know and that I've met him. I haven't, and I won't ever have that conversation with my brother. I don't owe it to him. And I was very adamant in telling all of my nieces and nephews. I wanted it to come from me, because I wanted to be the author of that story. Mm-hmm. And so that's been something that was very important to me. And so I called each one of them up individually and talked about it. And again, I'm very close in age with a lot of them. And so it was very interesting in their responses, because every single one of them were so warm and loving in it. And I think I was honestly worried that I was going to be treated different. And the only way I was treated different was just the support that I received in that. And so it was really actually such a great experience to get to tell them and to hear the comfort and support and hope that they had for me in this new life.
And how is your relationship with your mom? Do you want to touch on where that's at today?
Yeah. Again, my mom and I have never had a great relationship. I will call her every week. We have a standing phone call on Thursdays. And that conversation sometimes has not happened on Thursdays. For the longest time, she didn't want to know anything, and I didn't tell her anything. And then we finally had a conversation where she owned it and apologized. And it was really helpful, and it really helped me to forgive her. I think there are still days that I have to continue to forgive her. But I don't think that she understood the lifelong trauma and just weight that was put on me by this and onto my siblings. I mean, for the older two to have to hold that secret. My dad always knew that I wasn't his, and they felt like it was his dying wish for me not to know. And so I think he just never wanted me to feel unloved or not his. And that's the reason why he didn't want me to know. I think if he knew that I had been told, he would have always told me the truth after that. But just reiterated that I was his, that it just wasn't biologically.
Jodie, if people wanted to contact you, could they do that?
Yes. My email is Jodie, JODIER08 @gmail.com.
Jodie, thank you so much for sharing your story today. I mean, I was nodding along like crazy this whole time. Whenever I hear another person that has similar dynamics, I'm just like, yep. And the way you described how it felt, yeah, you were so clear. So thank you so much for sharing your story and where you're at today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
These stories are here for us to identify with. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, email npestories@gmail.com. You do not have to give any identifying information. If you are an NPE and would like to share your story, I'd like to hear from you. Subscribe to this podcast to hear more. Come heal with us.